And I think that it's really important to the employees that work here, a lot of them that I've talked to about it, that the company is owned and managed by a family member. And that, that sort of that generational approach to investment that we pride ourselves, in that philosophy, is largely enabled and underwritten by the fact that you've got a family member at the top.
That was Mike Warjone, a family member and 28-year veteran of sixth-generation forestry company Port Blakely, who took over as CEO on December 31st, 2025. In this episode, I talk with Warjone and his cousin, Port Blakely's chairman and outgoing CEO, René Ancinas, about their carefully planned leadership transition. Welcome to the Family Business Family Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Needles, editor-in-chief of Family Business Magazine. This episode also features part 2 of my conversation with fifth-generation co-presidents Jeannie Cullen Schultz and her brother, George Cullen of J.P. Cullen. The 133-year-old construction firm has grown into a nearly 1,000-person enterprise while maintaining a deep respect for the people in the field. But first, I'm joined by Pat Soldano, president of Family Enterprise USA and a contributing author to Family Business Magazine, who makes a compelling case for why family business owners must become advocates for themselves and their communities. Hi, Pat. Nice to see you as always. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Zach. I'm really, really pleased to be asked to come back.
Yeah, this is a great topic and obviously one that you're an expert on. So it's advocacy and why it's important to be an advocate for family business and for family businesses in general. And so let's start there. Why is it important to advocate and does it really make a difference?
It is so important to advocate because the tax laws in this country and all the legislation in this country is going to change. It's the nature of our system. And so if you want to be part of the solution, you really have to be there. And you have to be there in person. You have to be there continually and constantly. Our legislators are there to listen to you. And they really do want to hear what you're experiencing in terms of your challenges or issues running your family businesses. And legislators change. We have elections in the House every 2 years and in the Senate every 6 years. So there's new people all the time. Perfect example is when this last bill passed, the One Big Beautiful Bill in the House, only 25% of the people in the House of Representatives were actually around with the last tax bill. So they had no history of the legislation and they had to be educated. So it's really, really important that you meet with your members of Congress, and legislation does change. Our members of Congress say this legislation is permanent. Well, I can tell you, as someone who's worked Washington, D.C. and the Hill for 30 years, nothing is permanent. It's permanent until the next Congress changes it.
Absolutely. And I think even for family business owners who do understand how important advocacy is, a lot of them probably don't know where to start. So how does a family business owner or even a single citizen who's passionate about these issues reach out to lawmakers and where do they start in that process?
Well, they first need to start with knowing who their legislators are, and they shouldn't be embarrassed if they don't know that. They can go to congress.gov and they can put in their zip code and they can find exactly who are their federal legislators. They need to then reach out to them, and there's many ways you can do that. In today's world, it's an email, it's a phone call to their district office and then to their DC office. You can go meet with them in their district office. If you have the opportunity to go to DC, you should definitely make a meeting with the member or the staff. They really do want to see you and they love seeing constituents. So you should make the effort to do that. If you don't have the time to do that, go locally to their town hall meetings. Go to a fundraiser. It means you have to write a check, but it means you're in the room with the member of Congress. And if you go to the fundraiser, make sure that you actually talk to the member of Congress and their staff members. They're there to listen to you. So during the reception time, make sure you go up to them, be polite, but it's not inappropriate to ask for a specific issue that you're concerned about and a resolution to that issue. So again, I think sometimes people are intimidated by members of Congress, and they absolutely should not be, because they are there to listen and get to know their staff members, both at the district office as well as the national office. But all the other avenues, I wouldn't advise a letter because the mail is very slow, especially in Washington, D.C. with all the security.
Yeah, absolutely. And some great advice. And let's say you do get a formal meeting with a representative or a member of their staff. How much time can you expect to spend with them, since obviously we know these folks are busy?
They are busy. They do a meeting sometimes every 15 minutes. So you can appreciate that they have very long days. They are very busy. In DC, people in DC generally work very hard. They're there because they want to make a difference. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but that's why they're there. So your meeting could last is 10, 20 minutes, especially if it's with a member of Congress. Sometimes they get interrupted, they get pulled away. You may have a meeting scheduled and it gets canceled because a vote may come up. That's not their fault. They have to be there for votes. You shouldn't take that personally. You also should understand, especially in the House, you're probably not going to have a very fancy meeting room. You're going to be meeting in the lobby if there's not especially if it's a freshman member of Congress. You're not going to necessarily be meeting in a conference room. And you may even be meeting in the hallway because that's the only available space they have. So you just take advantage of that. It's very, very important that you are understanding of the situation. Usually all staff members of Congress, again, they want to see you, so they'll do everything possible to spend that time with you.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, often in these meetings, you end up speaking with a staff member instead of the congressperson themselves. Is it just as good as meeting with an elected official, or is that a waste of time, for lack of a better way to put it?
It's definitely not a waste of time. It's always great to try and meet with a member of Congress, but it's hard to get those meetings, especially if you're not a constituent. But the staff is very, very important. A member of Congress typically is not going to do something, sign on to a bill or specific legislation if it's not supported by their staff. So you want to get to know the staff. Of course, you want to meet with the member because ultimately the member has to make that decision. But I'll tell you a perfect example. We've met with a member of Congress 3 times, and he has yet to follow up with our ask because his staff in Washington, D.C. is short-staffed. So they don't have the resources right now to address our concerns. And so it's not because the member doesn't want to get on board. It's because really the staff doesn't have the resources. We're hoping that's going to change soon. So again, we're working with the staff because it's really, really important that they support what we're trying to do. So
Yeah.
they're just as important with meeting with the members. So people shouldn't discount that.
And when it comes to reaching out, regardless of who you end up talking to, is it important to be specific, have a specific ask, or is it okay to come in with kind of several more general issues of concern?
It's very important to be specific. And so if you get a meeting with a member or a staff member, the first thing is be prepared. Make sure you come with materials that you want to distribute. Make sure you know what you're going to say in advance. If you go with a group, make sure there's a leader in that group. You all go around the room very quickly and do your introductions. And then each of you say what your ask is. It's really important because there doesn't make sense to do these meetings if you're not asking for something. And again, be polite, be understanding. They may or may not agree with your ask, but it's appropriate to say, do you think this is a reasonable ask? Do you think your boss would accept this? Is something they would support? Get their input because the staff is important to the member of Congress. Leave a business card. It's very important that they know who you are. Because they may want to see you in your district. So it's really important to be organized. It's really, really important to be brief, be succinct, be bright, and then be gone.
Yeah, I love that. And so many great tips here already, but do you have any other best practices that come to mind for making your voice heard with lawmakers?
Yeah, I think that it is, the most important thing is just to do it. Even if it's an email or it's a response to social media. Many of the members of Congress now use social media and they'll post about family businesses. So you want to like those. You want to respond to those. You want to connect with your members of Congress through social media as well as through email. You also should check out their website and see if they have any events coming up that you could attend. That's always really important. And it's also critically important to follow up. If you do have the opportunity to meet with a member or a staff, make sure you follow up with an email or phone call and thank them, first of all, for the meeting. They need to be thanked. It's a difficult job and they need to be appreciated. And then remind them what your ask is again and tell them that you'll get back to them in 2 weeks. And really, if you have the time, you absolutely need to follow up. I will tell people that it takes more than one time. Unfortunately, that is our process, especially today. You really have to ask more than once. You have to continue to follow up because they have other things that they're dealing with. And like all of us, it's about priorities. So don't be afraid to continue to reach out. Again, be polite to your member of Congress, your district office, or your national office.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you've emphasized this point of don't be afraid, don't be intimidated. These folks are there to listen to you. They're elected officials for a reason, and that's their job. So I think that's a really important thing to point out. And I would just mention for more on this topic, Pat's latest column from the Hill is all about this, provides even more detail and more pointers on how to approach lawmakers. So that will be in our February 2026 print issue. But if you can't wait that long, it's online now at familybusinessmagazine.com. So check that out. Pat, always nice to see you and get your insights. And I really appreciate you talking about this issue because, as I mentioned, I think a lot of people understand that it's important to advocate, but they have no idea how to go about doing it. And it can be a little intimidating. So I appreciate your insights on this.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Advocating is so critically important no matter what your issue is. And I hope that family businesses understand that and make the effort because it is very important that their voices be heard. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
In this segment, J.P. Cullen's sibling co-leaders, Jeannie Cullen Schultz and George Cullen, explain how a field-first mindset, people-centered leadership, and clear expectations across the organization have helped preserve the values the company was founded upon and which they continue to uphold today. So the company has often emphasized a field-first mindset. And I'm basing this off of something that I read somewhere else that your grandfather, I think, said. So tell me if he didn't. But that basically the most important person in the company is the person swinging the hammer. And so how do you keep that legacy alive as the business grows? I think you mentioned, Jeannie, there's it's 900 plus people in the business, right? So and you have all these high-profile projects. How do you keep that legacy alive?
Well, it's something that we constantly think about, and it's intertwined in our mission statement, our vision statement, our values, and our beliefs. So it's always top of mind. But I know Jeannie would say the same thing. For us, it was so modeled by the behaviors of our grandfather and our dad and our two uncles. Like I have a lot of memories coming to the office and going to get a a Coke in the basement and then coming back up and visiting with my grandpa for a little bit. And men and women from the field would go by his office and he would know their name. That is intentional and it's something that Jeannie and I spend time on is getting to know people's names, getting to know people's interests and like when you go to the field, it's not just hi, I'm George. It's hey, your kid's a hockey player. And just having those connections is just so important. Not only doing it because of the positive nature of the business, but we like to do it. Like we want to be connected with our team members, and we learn that from there.
Yeah.
But the reality is, as we've grown as a business, it's no longer that Jeannie and I can be able to be that person for all of our 900 employees. It's not fair to them. It's unrealistic for us. So we've intentionally built out our what we call our senior management team. So those leaders, the expectation is clear. The number one priority of yours is people development. and doing those intentional things that we know has made our business successful.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, and I'm always sensitive to this because when we say the most important person the most important person in the company is one swinging the hammer, well, that signals to a lot of other people that I'm not the most important person.
Right. Right.
But you have to explain the why. And the why is our customers hire us to build buildings. They hire
Yeah.
us to pour concrete, erect steel, lay block, and that is done by very skilled tradespeople. So all of us that aren't skilled tradespeople, we're there to support those individuals. So if
Yeah.
it's a team member in IT, how do you ensure that tradesperson at a snap of the finger can pull up the plans on his phone?
Yeah.
If it's somebody in accounting who just have a huge job of ensuring everybody gets paid on time, direct deposit goes out
Yeah.
seamlessly. If it's us who are responsible for work procurement, we got to go win jobs that allow that person swinging the hammer to be successful.
Yeah.
So it's not just the person, but it is the aspect of what we do and what our customers pay us for. We
Yeah.
say we honor the field. We honor that our customers need us to build their hospitals, build their schools, build their food production facilities, their power generation. So we all play a role in supporting that.
Absolutely. And so here's a not a simple question, I guess, but a good one to kind of end on here. How are you positioning JP Cullen to survive and thrive into the next generation and beyond, while preserving those values that we were just talking about, the culture we were just talking about, which is so important, and this commitment to your workforce and to the communities that you serve?
Well, number one, we have to follow the playbook that worked prior to us
Yeah.
and ensure it's still relevant to the type of company we are. And it's already rattling around for me, like for our sixth generation, we all went and worked somewhere else. But I think it would be even better to take that to that next step is work somewhere else, get a promotion, start to get some profit responsibility before you come to your family business. Like really ratcheting up the intensity of the
Yeah.
experience that they get outside of the business. Number two, we take so much pride in. We just did a survey of our employees, and the the one and two thing that came through those surveys is how much they love being an employee at a family-owned company. And then number two, how much everybody is focused on people development.
Yeah.
And to me, those things go hand in hand. So at a really young age, we're going to be communicating to our sixth generation. This company's bigger than you. It's about the people in the business, and that focus on people will allow them to be successful. And then the last thing, again, COVID had a lot of miserable things about it. But one of the interesting things was the whole essential versus non-essential business, which
Mm.
I didn't necessarily agree with. But it was what it was. But
Yeah.
we had a rallying cry around there. We were deemed to be an essential business because, again, we built hospitals, we built schools, we
Right.
built food production, power generation, so many things that if that doesn't happen, society, the community has issues.
Yeah.
So again, for our sixth generation, for our team members, that rallying cry of we're doing really cool, important stuff, that to me keeps that mission above anything than family dynamics and makes you can continue to understand the business is bigger than you. Jeannie, I think I missed.
No, I think you nailed it. We're just incredibly fortunate and blessed to be doing this, and every day is while there's some challenging days, every day is so cool. The different things we get to do, and the projects we get to do, and the impacts we get to have. So, looking forward to continuing to do it and having a lot of fun through the process as well.
I love it. Well, I can hear from talking to you both that the passion that you have for the family business and the fun that you're having, and so I just really appreciate it. I love talking to folks who have been so thoughtful about what it means to be part of a family business. It must be something about those Wisconsin-based family businesses. You guys really have it figured out. But I love it. I appreciate you taking the time to chat and to share your insights, and I hope we get to chat again soon.
Thanks, Zach. Thank you for
So take
shining a
care.
spotlight on family businesses. They're so important, and appreciate you doing so.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome.
In this segment, I sit down with Port Blakely's chairman and now former CEO, René Ancinas, and his cousin, newly installed CEO, Mike Warjone. In this interview, which was recorded before the leadership transition became official on December 31st, 2025, Ancinas and Warjone explain how strong family governance and a majority independent board helped ensure continuity, trust, and long-term alignment as the company prepared for its next chapter. Hi, Mike. Hi, René. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Good to be here.
So let's start with the background of Port Blakely and how did each of you first come to work for the company? And René, I'll kick that question to you to start us off here.
It's an interesting, we come from different perspectives, so that'll be interesting, even though we're in the same generation. But basically, Port Blakely was established in 1864 on Bainbridge Island in Seattle. It was the third try of the founders' venture into the timber business back then in those pioneering days. And then our family, Mike and I are cousins, our family arrived in Washington in about 1903 and purchased the assets out of basically an estate with a partnering family. And then around 1923, we split off from that partnering family and we went on our own. But our family has been in the timber business basically since about 1830, goes back multiple generations through the timber boom in Maine and then in Michigan. And then in 1903 is basically when we start counting it as 6 generations since then. So that's, and today we're in the forestry business that some would call it the timber business, but over that many, many, many decades, we've been in a number of different businesses all around forestry and wood products, from shipping to salt trade to real estate to export, shipping again and then out of shipping. And then ultimately we are just a pure forestry play, which is kind of our heart and soul.
Right. And so, René, how did you first get involved in the family business?
Well, I first got involved in around 2000, 1999, 2000. I was living in the Bay Area. I had no background in forestry, but I'd worked in a couple of internet startups, and I was actually trained as a musician. So I was supplementing my income, and I was doing internet startups and basically seeing how people could be treated poorly. And in the periphery, I'd been coming to annual meetings and started to get a sense that there was this better way of doing things, of treating people. And around 2000, there was a task force formed to work on a family employment policy. And because I'd had this kind of bad experience, I thought, well, that would be interesting. And it was a very interesting person who had come to our annual meeting, and that was John Davis. At that time, he was with teaching a program at Harvard Business School. And I just thought it would be interesting. So that was kind of my hook, was really more about how people are treated. And through that angle, and that led to the forming of our family council and our governance structure, and sort of the rest is history. So I came in through that door. Mike has a very different, I think, very interesting experience too. So I'll pass it over to Mike for his perspective.
Yeah, thanks, René. So it's interesting because Port Blakely is a company that there's very few family members that work for the company. It's a big family, but and just coincidentally and luckily, my father was one of the family members that was involved directly with the business for his entire career. And there's only been a half a dozen actual family members that have worked here over the last century.
Yeah.
But so my father was a forester. He worked in the woods his whole career, and as a child, I would follow him around. And I think long before I even really understood my family relationship with the ownership, I wanted to be a forester like my dad. So I grew up in that world. I went off to college and got a degree in economics, and toyed with the idea of being a stock trader for a while. But the forest called me back, and thus began a 28-year journey now as an employee at Port Blakely, and soon to take over the helm as CEO. So it's been my life from the beginning.
I love that. And so, yeah, Mike, you mentioned it. The reason why we're chatting today, other than the fact that it's just a really interesting family and an interesting story, is that you are about to take over from René as CEO December 31st, correct? Um, and René, you are the chair of the board of directors and CEO. So you're going to continue as chair, and Mike's going to take over as CEO. So I want to talk a little bit about the succession planning and leadership transition process. Mike, what has that been like from your perspective? To get prepared to take this CEO role on?
Yeah, great question. So I'll go back a little bit and say that, I was working here when they made the announcement that René was going to be our next CEO 16
Right.
years ago or whatever it was. It's been a while. And he was taking over Jim Warjone, who was at the time a family CEO. And I can remember being in that room and looking around the room, and there was an audible sigh of relief, in my opinion, that from the employees that another family member would be taking over. And I think that it's really important to the employees that work here, a lot of them that I've talked to about it, that the company is owned and managed by a family member. And that,
Interesting.
that generational approach to investment that we pride ourselves, in that philosophy, is largely enabled and underwritten by the fact that you've got a family member at the top. And
Yeah.
so they work here. The owners of the company care very much about the employees. And so at that time, I remember observing that, and I'm not going to say I was surprised, but I was surprised at how open people were about that feeling.
Yeah.
And so, as time goes on and René's winding towards retirement, um, I started thinking about this next step, to directly answer your question. And I started asking, sort of having subtle but sort of step level conversations with people about what's their vision for the future of the business. These are employees, managers and directors, and what excites you about working here? What do you really think we can do in the next generation? Because I wanted to kind of inform my worldview on what leadership would look like, going forward. And all of that is built around this idea of just maintaining trust and building trust with the employees, and knowing, they need to know that we really care, and I care about, the success of the company for their benefit.
Right.
So leading up to the succession sort of announcement was a lot of me in the background, just kind of trying to feel out where people think we need to be going. And that really helped me have a clear point of view when I stood up in front of the board and said, yeah, I want this job. And here's what I kind of think we need to do.
Yeah.
I think that was helpful.
Yeah, it's excellent. And it's really interesting because we have seen a trend more recently where family businesses are looking at the idea of bringing a non-family CEO or some kind of non-family leaders. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with either approach, but it's interesting to hear that for you all, it's important to have a family member at the helm. But if you're going to do that, you also have to make sure that's somebody who's qualified and prepared to take over that role, right? And so, Mike, it sounds like that was obviously very important part of this process for you. René, what was this process like from your perspective to kind of wind down as CEO and get Mike ready for action?
Well, it's a super interesting process because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the kind of the hook for me was employment policy, and back in 99, 2000, for a whole different bunch of reasons. But one of the early things I learned about good family governance is that you have to have these clear, um, kind of standards of connection, the roles and responsibilities of the corporate board from the family, from the owners. The three circle model was really helpful to me and a lot of the family to make sure that you really focus on the areas, the corporate governance focuses on the areas that's what's best for the company and the business, and the family has to talk about what's best for the family, and there's this overlink. So I say that because I think what the process has been for me is a little bit of bookends. I was brought in, and when I was basically recruited to come in from the outside of the company, my first question is, sort of why me? And at the time, what the company really needed is, and what the board felt, and what my predecessor, Jim Warjone, was really clear about explaining, is they need somebody who can bring the family together to build the trust and pride in the company, as we say. Make sure that we're building on this momentum of cohesion so that we stay family owned. and that the family really understands the business. So I came in more from that perspective. And similarly, you know, all these years later, and technically it's 20 years later, but 15 in the CEO role, it's interesting because I had a very similar experience that Mike described on my first day, which I vividly remember going down to our forestry operation and how many people came up to me and thanked me and said, "We're so glad to have a family member here." So, you know, there's a couple of things that tie that back to the corporate governance. The corporate governance, you know, the board looks at this and says, well, what does the company need now? Well, we're a very different company. We're not a, you know, sort of a family enterprise with 4 or 5 businesses. We're really a pure forestry play. We've built the cohesion and the trust of the family. And now it's really about what can we do in our core business? So looking at the skills and competencies, both internally and externally, the board began to think about, is it the right time to go outside and have a non-family? Do we have any, talent inside? We wanted to make sure as a board that we were thinking about the next 10 to 20 years of the company's trajectory. And we were fortunate that when we came full circle, we found, and, in talking to Mike, he had all those qualities. But the board at the same time did have to consider what would it take to go outside. And we can talk about, if you're interested, some of the things we learned about that. But the full circle was that it's been a really interesting journey for me to see how the company over a long term pivots a little bit around what's best for the company and how that's impacted our succession planning over the years.
Absolutely. And I would love to talk a little bit more. Why don't we go right to that now? Talk a little bit more about what you learned from that process of thinking about, going outside.
Well, yeah, I think the exercise that the board went through, and just to provide a little bit of background, because I know people in family business will be curious about this. Before I ever arrived, my predecessor put in place a board structure where we had a majority independent professional board members, and then we had family members on the board. So we are currently 11 board members, 6 independent, 5 family, and myself included on the family side as chair. That was a good call because it really started this process of making sure we were applying best practices in independent company boards and bringing in that expertise from outside board experience. And the way that kind of played itself out in this scenario was, again, really wanting to make sure that we had what was right for the company. And when they went through that very diligent process and saying, well, what are the pros and cons of a non-family? Making sure we brought in some outside current thinking, and could we attract somebody, which we felt like we could. But there are also risks of the, system rejection of a non-family member. And also what you heard Mike say, we have a culture that really values and really tightly aligns with family management. And so, but in that process, I think one of the things the board realizes that our family governance structure, which we put in place, say in around 2000 to 2004, really needed some upgrading. Our family council has been very productive and has been very impactful, but it really kind of raised the awareness that, at least in our structure, there's a real need to make sure the owner's voice is heard, that the family council is more sustainable on its own. And we've talked to other family companies that run into this after they've, built their council and their constitution over 20, 30 years. There's sort of a next level you need to go to. And so that has pushed us towards an evolution of our family governance, where we're now talking about the family president role taking on the family council president role taking on more scope, more responsibility, and making sure that the family council representing the family and the owners has more accountability and higher expectations, but also continuing support. So we're evolving that role to a president that will report to the CEO and will be at least initially a contract employee. And how we do that came about as part of the succession process. Kind of long story short, is realizing we needed to shore up our family business governance for long-term sustainability. So what we're creating now is kind of a next-gen partnership. So CEO, chair, family president, and of course the board and the CFO all play a big role in family connection and ownership representation.
I think it's also, when you consider René's career began on the family governance side and the creation of the original Provisional Family Council and all of that business, there's a little bit of I would use an analogy of a child that's learning to ride a bike, for the first time, and the parent is running along behind them, holding onto the seat, and at some point you let go and they don't know it. And my sense is that the family governance system is working well, and this family president thing is going to sort of codify that they are on their own, as far as they don't have René there, as the guy that's been there the whole time. When he's no longer in that room, that they're going to have the ability to ride the bike on their own, and I think it's going to really help.
Yeah, we're just buying helmets for everybody.
No, I love that, and I love that you're being so thoughtful about shoring it up for the future. And we were just in San Diego last week as we're recording this for our Transitions Fall event. And shout out to Amanda Starr, who's the Family Council head for Port Blakely, and Liz Marzoff, who's the Chief People Officer. They gave a really great presentation on exactly what you were just talking about and why it's so important, even if you have strong family governance already in place, making sure that it's sustainable for the future. And René, you touched on this a little bit, but Mike, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts too. How important was this strong family governance model to your transition into the CEO role? Like, how did that play? What factor did that play?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like all family business. There's over 100 of us that are related that own this company, and managing a company for over 100 of your cousins can be daunting. And the fact that we have such a robust and mature family governance system in place gives me comfort that I'll be able to do the job of managing the business and not also have to be always dealing with whatever family issue might come up. There'll be some of that, I know, and René's going to sort of smile because there's always the CEO is always involved in a few of those things. But the fact that this system is in place is one of the things that makes me really comfortable in the decision to move ahead with this role.
You're not just a CEO, you're a family business CEO. You don't just serve on a board, you're a board member of a family business. You don't just lead a group, you lead a family council. That's why Family Business Compass exists. That's why Family Business Compass exists, a national membership community designed exclusively for family business leaders from the team behind Family Business Magazine. Built on 35 plus years of experience, Family Business Compass offers peer groups, tools and templates, online education, research, events, and more. We're launching more peer groups now with limited spots to ensure valuable interaction, and demand has exceeded expectations. Apply now at familybusinessmagazine.com/family-business-compass to strengthen your governance, leadership, and legacy. That's it for this episode of the Family Business Family Podcast. If you have ideas for future topics or future guests, reach out to me at zneedles@familybusinessmagazine.com. Talk to you soon.